able to, and take it away.
All right, we're just loading in here. Just be a moment.
Thank you.
All right, we are ready to roll, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. It is February 11th, 2021, and this is our county council meeting. I want to welcome everyone. It's actually a very nice day out, depending on where you're sitting. It's nice here in Hanover. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Currently, we have all members of Grey County Council in attendance with the exception of Councillor Soever, and I will let you know when he arrives.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, is there any declaration of interest from anyone? I do not see anyone. Therefore, we'll proceed on. If one does arise, I would ask you to declare it at that time. Item number 4, adoption of minutes. A is County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes dated January 28th, 2021, and the special Committee of the Whole budget discussion minutes, which are dated January 29th. Those are moved by Councillor Keaveney and seconded by Councillor Potter. And Madam Clerk, I'll turn things over to you for some developments.
Thank you, and I'll likely reach out to Anne Marie as well. I will note that Councillor Soever has joined us. So just for Council's information, that new information has been received by staff in the last few days related to the loan for the Owen Sound Housing Company, and thus the resolution to adopt the January 28th, 2021 Committee of the Whole minutes need to be amended. Tara has a new resolution drafted, and she can put that on the screen when we're ready. But I'll just, I wanted to inform Council of that. I did speak with the mover and seconder, Councillors Keaveney and Potter respectively, to let them know of that, and they were still happy to move and second those amended minutes. So Anne Marie.
Certainly. Good morning, Council. Just what did come to light was the security that we proposed in the resolution was going to provide, or was going to cause Owen Sound Housing Company to incur costs. And that was the entire reason of us providing the short-term loan in the first place, was so that those costs would not be incurred. And also that it could cause delays. So we're changing the type of security that we're using. And we wanted to reflect that in the minutes, that we would be now looking at a promissory note and agreement versus the registering on title.
Thank you. So we're going to have those that amendment put up on the screen.
Yes, Tara's just going to share her screen.
Thank you.
So it's the highlighted piece there. The council minutes from the 28th and the budget meeting minutes from the 29th are as adopted as presented. And it's just the Committee of the Whole 28th with the third clause of that resolution being amended to strike out the last piece of that particular clause.
Okay, anyone have any, well, we'll deal with the amendment first, or can we deal with this as a whole?
We can deal with it all at once. It's been moved as amended, so.
Oh, excellent, thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions about any of the minutes? All understood?
I'm sorry, Mr. Warden, I do see our Director of Legal Services has his hand up.
Okay, go right ahead, sir.
Morning, everyone. Just a small point of clarification. The promissory note is not security. It's evidence of the debt, but it's an unsecured loan is what's being requested here. That's all.
Thank you. And I'm gathering that we're sort of dealing with the time pressure here. So we're moving this way. I'm gathering in the future we'll be looking for a secured mortgage arrangement. Would that be correct, sir? This
is something that I think we'll be looking into in the future to establish a more consistent policy with respect to. I don't know if the CAO wants to add anything with respect to that.
Thanks, Michael. And yes, I think over time, our the size of the projects that we're involved in, the level of investment that's required on the county's part has changed, and I think that's true of any construction project. So we will be coming forward to council in the future with an updated policy. We also want to work with our providers. These nonprofits are critical to getting these projects done, and so we need to work closely with them to make sure that every aspect of these projects is well understood. So there's some work to do here, and we will undertake that work in the coming months.
Yes, which I'm sure will include probably some sort of a reaching out to individuals to let them know that I guess change is afoot. And
absolutely, and to get their input into how things can work for them as well as ourselves.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands. If that is the case, then I will call the question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much. We're on to item 4B, which is the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Planning Task Force minutes dated January 22nd, and some resolutions contained therein. It is moved by Councillor Milne and seconded by Councillor Desai. And any questions with respect to those minutes?
I see Councillor Millen.
Oh, Councillor Milne, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I note in the resolution to adopt those minutes, I guess it would be the second clause, number 2, that SHS Consulting has been retained, etc. Yeah. Was there not some work done in this regard? I guess it would be the last term of council, consulting as to potential uses for the facility. Is this a repeat or a rerun, or why? Or can I get a little bit of clarification on that, please? I mean, I wasn't involved the last term, so I'm not certain what the outcome of that consulting was.
I could speak. Thank you. So earlier, when we were considering some further options with regard to how we might proceed with long-term care services and other services to seniors, we did retain CBRE to provide some advice to council, and that work really centered around what the current status of senior services was in the county. What do people need? What's available to them? Looking at the costs and the level of resources that people have to be able to support that. And this work is much more about the building itself. So certainly that some of that work will factor into this. Times are changing, right? Oh, yeah. So the things that you did 5 years ago might not be the things that you would do today. So I think we want to refresh that and the analysis that was done earlier, as well as take a good look at the functionality of the building, what a renovation would entail, the kind of investment that would be, as well as now we know that we're in a situation where we're going to add on to an existing building, and we want to be really clear about where there might be opportunities for efficiencies or sharing of amenities, that sort of thing, and where things need to be kept really separate. So this is a big part of what SHS will be able to provide to us in this project.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I do not see any other hands. So with that said, I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that too is carried. We will move on to item 4C, which is the CAO Performance Evaluation Committee minutes dated February 4th. That has been moved by Councillor Desai and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any discussions therein? Seeing none, I will call the question. Anyone opposed? And there is none, so that too is carried. Item 4D, the CAO Performance Evaluation Committee closed meeting minutes, which are also dated February 4th. That's been moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Mackey. Any questions? We have to go into closed. There were, but there are none. And if that's the case, I will call the question. Anyone opposed? And there is none, so that too is carried. Item 5 is closed meeting matters. There aren't any. Item 6 is reports. And we have the board report dated January 21st and the minutes dated December 18th. Dr. Era, I understand, is on the line. Did we have a mover for that? I believe we did. No, I have a mover for the bylaws, but I do not have a mover for this particular report. So I will call for a mover, moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Robinson. And Dr. Era, you have the floor.
Good morning, Ward, and good morning, Council. Thank you for having me. The highlight from the board report was the vaccination plan for Gray and Bruce, and it is consistent with the provincial framework. The part of the plan is the mass immunization hubs and the task force to execute that rather large project. All these components are in place and progressing nicely. In general, the situation report in Grey Bruce, which is related to the board report as well, is we maintain full control over the pandemic locally, and we currently have, as we had at the time of the board, no outbreaks in long-term care, retirement homes, schools, or daycare. If there is interest in any specific questions, or if the board or the council would like me to provide the situation update on the COVID and opioid, I'll be more than happy to, but that's in general the highlight from that board meeting, Mr. Warden.
So maybe we can pause there. Any questions for Dr. Era? Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you to Dr. Era. I understand that as things open up next week, we are opening up in yellow zone. And I thought that when this last kind of shutdown took place that we were in green. So what is the rationale for being in yellow as opposed to green? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, when the lockdown took place, I believe we were in the yellow. Regardless, we always look with the ministry at the previous 2 to 3 weeks, the week between 2 and 3 weeks in the past, where the data would decide what color we're in right now. And to the best of my ability to look at the data, when we open next week, we will be qualified for either green or yellow. And that is based on the same indicators in the framework, mainly the epidemiology, the hospital capacity, all these measures. So this decision will happen quite close to the announcement itself. And I believe we would be back in the yellow if the prediction remains the same. And it's worth mentioning whether we're in the green or the yellow for businesses or for different sectors in the community, the measures would be the same in a way that we left them before the lockdown.
Thank you, but I believe it's worthwhile making clear, Dr. Era, that we don't know whether we're going to be green, yellow, or any other color until the ministers actually make that announcement.
Precisely.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Patterson?
Thank you, Warden. I can wait. I just have a little bit of an update, so I'll wait till the questions are finished.
Okay. Any other?
I do see Councillor Mackey and Councillor Potter.
Excellent. Councillor Mackey, please.
Thanks, Warden, and thanks very much, Doctor. I just wanted to congratulate you and your team on the vaccination rollout plan. It was nice to see it on CTV News last week, so again, congratulations. The other day, General Hillier mentioned that phase 2, April, May, and June, they're expecting 7.6 million vaccines. Do you know what, have any idea what that would translate into Grey and Bruce counties?
Not the exact numbers, but it will be the second phase, which is essential workers, and that would entail vaccinating first responders, school, municipal staff, any person who would be considered essential in the context of the emergency. And I do believe we have the ability to vaccinate that group in way less than the 3 months that the province is projecting.
Excellent. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Era, for your report. And I know that you've been quite concerned about the opioid situation, and I just wondered if there's any new update, and would you agree that we may be dealing with this situation a lot longer than we will be with COVID at this stage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, definitely, it is definitely concerning, and I agree with the statement that it's an issue that requires long-term commitment to ensure solutions are in place. We had in January and so far in February 25 EMS calls. The emergency data is not out yet, and it's worth mentioning that in the data from 2020 with complete confirmation from the coroner will not be out until April and June. Last time I presented to the council, I made an error in that the numbers we have from the Ministry of Health were up to September 12 deaths in 2020, and we will provide an update when that complete number comes. At this point, we have 2 alerts that went out in the past, in 2021, related to a cluster of overdose. Core programs are in place and remain in place. Needle exchange program, naloxone program, opioid working group, and coordinating. We have completed outreach in multiple housing facility, Victoria Village, food banks, and medical clinics, and some street outreach, and involvement in a drug and alcohol strategy leadership and the steering committee and chairing of the opioid working group. So that's the type of response we have, and we are looking forward when the COVID emergency ends to tailor all our effort to that long-term commitment.
Thank you, Dr. Era. And I would just say that a number of people have raised this issue with me, and I have asked staff to bring something a little more fulsome back to council at a future date. So I know that that's in the hands of Barb Feedy. She and I had some brief conversation by email this morning. I know that there was a meeting yesterday of the opioid working group. I don't know if she wants to chime in now. Again, I'm famous for pressuring people, aren't I? On the spot. Don't feel that you need to chime in now, because I do know that staff are planning to bring something more fulsome to council at a future date. Okay, and Councillor, I don't see any other hands, so that means I can now go to Councillor Patterson, correct?
I do see Councillor Mackey's hand up again.
I didn't. He's on my second screen, so I better flip over there once in a while. Sorry, Councillor Mackey.
No problem, Warden. Yes, Councillor Desai and I sat in on the meeting yesterday for the drug and alcohol working group, And some of the highlights from yesterday was they're looking at a simple possession exemption. They're wanting to expand the safe supply initiatives and are looking at how to do that. They're looking at mobile harm reduction initiatives. Currently, the individuals that are dying, it's happening to people that are taking the drugs alone. So there's no one there with naloxone to help them out if they run into trouble. So safe supply options. We did have the peer advisory committee. There was 3 individuals that spoke to us yesterday, and really good insight into the issues around opioids and drugs. And I would certainly encourage county council to invite them to attend and speak to us. It was really interesting to hear from people with lived experience. They are also looking at a drug treatment court, which would kind of stay charges. There would be a wraparound team that would involve mental health and housing and all the different resources. And then if the person's successful and graduates, they go back in front of the judge a year later, and those charges are stayed or resolved, I guess, dropped. Those were some of the highlights. So the group is certainly active, and they've got different subcommittees, and I'm really optimistic that they're moving in the right direction. So there'll be more to come. That's just a quick overview from what I picked up the other day, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, sir. And I was happy to read an article passed on to me by Barb Feedy this morning that showed OPP officers, and I have to send love to them because as a result of their use of naloxone, they've saved 200 plus lives, which I think is hugely significant. All right, I do not see any other hands, so I believe that now I can go to Councillor Patterson.
Mr. Warden, sorry,
Yeah.
if I may, sorry, I can't raise my hand.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah.
I just regarding the question about the number of people in phase 2, it is on page number 8 of our plan posted on our website, and I can go through the numbers quickly. The total would, the essential workers are around 30,000 people. Adults age 60 and above are about 50,000 people, and at-risk population 26,000 people, and remaining eligible population 11,000 people.
Thank you, sir. I did read that. Okay, Councillor Patterson, you're on now.
Thank you, Warden Hicks. Good morning, everyone. During that meeting in December, we did hold elections, and I'm pleased to share that Ann Eady, the mayor of Kincardine, is the new vice chair, and the chair, I was elected chair, and I'm pleased to have that honor. And we also filled the vacant provincial appointee position, and that is filled by Helen Claire Tingling from West Grace. So we welcome her to the board. And just of note, we set our meeting dates for 2021, and they are the 4th Friday of every month. Thank you, Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Is there anything else here? I don't see any other hands.
Yes, Councillor Soever.
Go ahead, Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a question for Dr. Eyre regarding his last comments. It just reminded me that most of the elderly, we have the oldest part of Grey County here in the town of the Blue Mountains. And so we would fall in that over 60. I think our average age is like 57. So there's a huge number of people over 60 in this end of the county. And I haven't seen any plans yet for a mass vaccination clinic in this end of the county. So I just want to know if there are plans for such.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 3 hubs, as you know, are in Hanover, Kincardine, and Owen Sound. This is one system. There is a second system that usually services all Grey Bruce, which is the traditional distribution to family health teams, to pharmacies, and other healthcare providers, we would anticipate that the hub would take pressure off the other system to provide that service. Regardless, part of the work with the task force for vaccine is to map out spaces that are available for bigger clinics or mass clinics in every community in Grey and Bruce, and providing those spaces that are volunteered by organizations that would provide them, providing these for pharmacists and family health teams that would like to scale up their operation. So that would provide that bigger mass clinics in wherever they're needed. We don't expect that there's going to be a flood of vaccine that would cover all Grey Bruce within 2 weeks, and we have to activate everything. The other alternative solution is to move parts of the hub to the communities that they need them, to have the smaller hub in different places. Regardless, I do believe that we would be prepared for any scenario that will take place at that time when more vaccines are available.
Thank you, sir. And I am flipping between both screens and I do not see anyone else with their hand up. And I believe, sorry, I see Councillor Robinson now that I flip back to the screen. Go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, I would certainly like to extend congratulations to Councillor Patterson for becoming a chair of the Board of Health. Well done.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, I think we are ready to call the question on this report. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that is passed. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I want to apologize to you. You gave me a perfectly good sheet to try to keep me organized, and I did a great job of messing it up on you. So my apologies to you. We are on item 7 now. You must have been chuckling. That guy, what a doughhead, right? Item number 7, we have 2 bylaws. They're being moved by Councillor Woodbury and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Are there any questions on either of these bylaws?
I do see Councillor Desai's hand.
Councillor Desai, go right ahead. Councillor, Councillor Desai.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would ask that the question be split into, and so that we can vote on the 2 bylaws separately, please.
Okay.
Okay, so we will need a resolution or a motion on the floor to separate or to vote on the bylaws separately.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Desai. Is there anyone who is seconded by Councillor Robinson that they be separated? And now, Madam Clerk, can I deal with 510721?
We need to vote on the separation.
Oh, my apologies. First. Okay, so all those in favor of the split? Sorry, anyone opposed? Anyone opposed to the split? I'll get this thing right yet. Is there anyone opposed? No one opposed that I can see, so that is carried. We are now ready to deal with them separately, so I will deal with 510721. That's with respect to the Code of Conduct. And so do I need a separate mover, Madam Chair, or can I still use Councillors Woodbury and Patterson?
If Councillor Woodbury and Patterson are fine to move bylaw 5107, then you can certainly use them. I see Councillor Woodbury.
I see both of them
yes,
nodding their heads. Okay, so we'll go with that. And the item is now on the floor. Are there any questions? I do not see any questions. That said, I will call the question. Anyone opposed to approval of this bylaw? And again, I see no one waving their hands or nodding their heads. So that is carried. Thank you very much. I probably need 2 new movers then, don't I, Madam Clerk, for 510821 with respect to the estimates. So moved by Deputy Warden McQueen and Councillor Carlton. Any questions on this item? Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I've had a bit of a hard time understanding why we've moved the 1% from reserves, and so I tried to look back at some of the data. And one of the things we mentioned quite a bit in at the committee of the whole was that we were doing this to be fiscally responsible and to be fiscally aware of the pressures that our constituents were facing during this significantly hard year. The data suggests that in 2020, our funding requirement had gone up 3.5% to approximately $2.01 million at 3.5%. In 2021, the funding requirement was 1.4 million at 2.4% increase. And this is, of course, before we do the funding for the asset management and affordable housing, and it's also before we take into account the additional growth. What has me particularly bothered is that we could avoid taking this 1% from the reserves if we were to postpone the $500,000 movement to the affordable housing fund and postpone that to a time where we can actually afford to do that from levy funded monies. I know I'm not going to change minds. It was very clear it was a 17-1 vote on Friday, and I'm not going to change minds here today. And so I'm not going to take up much of your time, but I will leave you with this thought. And it's, some of you may have heard the original quote. I've modified it a bit. We must use levy funding today so that our children may have reserve funds to fix aging infrastructure. Our children will need to fix aging infrastructure so that their children may have a great county and each of our individual municipalities worth growing up in. And which is why I don't think I'm certain I cannot support the bylaw today, and which is why I wanted it to be split into two questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Warden, for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Are there any other people with questions or comments on this bylaw? Seeing none, I will then call the question. Anyone opposed to approval of this bylaw?
Opposed.
There being just one opposed, that is carried. Okay, so we will move on then to item number 8, good news and celebrations. Is there anyone with news that they want to share? I see Councillor Potter.
Yes, thank you, Warden. Just this Saturday night, Craigleith Heritage Depot presents the next 2 in their real history film series. One of those is on the Craigleith fossils, which does not include me. It's about it's about the 450 million year old fossils along the Georgian Bay shoreline along Craigleith and between Craigleith and Thornbury. It's one of the oldest, one of the few places on Earth where you can find fossils this old visible. And you can actually walk on that shoreline and see them. So there's one film about the fossils. The other is about the Niagara Escarpment. So sorry about that. And it will be telling the story of the escarpment and its natural history. Both of them are made by a company called Mountain Goat Films, which is located right here in the Blue Mountains. And they use a lot of very new and interesting techniques in their filmmaking. They did the 2 earlier films on the Scenic Caves and the Mary Ward, if you had a chance to see those. So those are being launched this week. You can go to the Craigleith Heritage Depot website through the Blue Mountains Public Library and see the schedule for it and sign up. It should be about an hour presentation. So it's very worthwhile and very interesting for people to learn a little more about Grey County history and the deep and rich history that we have here.
Thank you very much, Councillor Potter, and I would agree with you. I think the Niagara Escarpment does have quite a story to tell. It's fascinating. Any other people? I only saw Councillor Desai. I see your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Rotaract Highlanders, it's a group of young people we're based in Markdale or Grey Highlands, but we've got members in other parts of the county as well. We will be making a donation of $250 to the Safe and Sound organization in Owen Sound. We're also, if you remember last year, we did the fundraising for the hospice and ended up raising over $23,000 over the course of 19 days. We're also now looking at how we can do that again this year. And so if anyone has any ideas for what we can do as a fundraiser, feel free to reach out. And if there's any young people watching this enthralling meeting, feel free to reach out if you'd like to join us. Thank you very much, Mr. Warden.
You're very welcome. Anyone else? I do not see anyone else. I want to thank you for that. And we'll move next to item 9, adjournment. And that's been moved by Councillor Potter and seconded by Councillor Burley. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that too is carried. Thank you very much. We will take a second to flip over, close out here, and move over to Committee of the Whole. I'll just give you all a second just to find your place. Very good. I'm in place and ready to go. So we are now meeting as a Committee of the Whole, and I would call this meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest from anyone for the agenda? Look at my screens. I do not. Oh, I see Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Warden. And I will need to declare on the Hilton Heads Heights condominium project in Meaford, report number PDR-CW-0821, 4A in the agenda.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations to be made? Seeing none, I would just say if one comes up in the course of our business, you'll make the announcement at that time. Item number 3, determination of items requiring separate discussion. You have the agenda before you. Is there anything that needs to be pulled? And seeing none. By the way, that's being moved by Councillor Burley and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. And if we have nothing that needs to be pulled, then I will call the question. Anyone opposed? Okay, that is carried. Okay. Sorry about that. Item number 5 now then. Items for direction and discussion. Item A is the speed limit policy. That's been moved by Councillor Desai and seconded by Councillor Patterson. Matt, I believe you have the floor with this one.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Good morning, councillors. This report is referencing the speed limit evaluation policy, which has been in place since 2016, or was endorsed by council in 2016, sorry. It was due for an update last year, so we're off slightly by a bit here, but this is the update to this policy. I know it does say that the old one has been rescinded under this report. That's because we have a new system in place for our policy. So basically it's the exact same policy, only it's been updated to add criteria for urban sections, essentially to try and be consistent with the application of any requests from the lower tier municipalities for speed limit reductions, say 40 kilometers an hour per se. The original policy and existing policy basically has criteria in it for rural roads. We've added the urban section, and it covers off different criteria that we evaluate the roads to try and rationalize what the speed limit should be in case we have to articulate that to whether it be council or the public or whomever may be requesting a review of what the speed limit is. So there's geometric criteria included in this policy, as well as non-geometric criteria. And it's all laid out there. But again, essentially what the update covers off is that, as I mentioned, for urban roads, if a lower tier jurisdiction, say has Southgate, Dundalk specifically in the past, last year, I believe, they wanted to lower the speed limits within their community to 40 kilometers an hour. There was really no mechanism in place for the county to follow suit without taking a bylaw forward, either endorsing or not endorsing our county road within that jurisdiction to be dropped to that speed limit. So we, at that time, there were some concerns from council with regard to how that was going to be approached in the future. So by updating this policy, it gives us a mechanism to lower the speed limit on the county road to match that of the lower tier jurisdiction. It's would seemingly be a seamless way to go about it, with the lower tier jurisdiction endorsing a bylaw to lower the speed limit, and then we would do the same. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. If there's any questions or concerns?
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. There is a question from Councillor Burley.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Matt, just kind of a statement and a question. Great Road 1, leaving the city of Owen Sound, going all the way around, come back with in South Bruce Peninsula. It's just an amazing road with the speed limit seem to go up and down all over the place. And I've been getting a lot of calls concerning it, and I'm quite sure that you and Pat have got one from a particular group concerning the speed limit, wanting to reduce them. My question is, have you re-looked at the whole road system, like Road 1? I know reasons why speed limits were put down before. I'm just wondering, have you re-looked at them now to see if they should be adjusted? I do believe in county roads are made to move traffic. Don't get me wrong. They're good roads, and I believe that. But I'm just curious if you follow the route around Grey Road 1 from, say, Owen Sound, going through Bonnie Beach and out through. It's just amazing up and down the speed limits. I'm just always curious why. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Warden. We haven't studied the corridor as a whole. It would be an awful tough sell for us, I think, especially with the public, to go back and say raise speed limits that were lowered by previous bylaw through council for whatever the rationale may have been at the time. I can't speak for what previous councils have just how it's been justified to lower speed limits or to, whatever the situation may have been. But I can say, leaving Owen Sound, heading north up Grey Road 1, as you spoke to, there's a 60-kilometer speed limit right up to past Bonnie Beach. That speed limit's been in place for probably 25 years or more. I really can't say what the total history is, but it's been at least that long, I would think. And then it goes down to a 70 for really no good reason between Indian Acres Road, generally speaking, and just around Cobble Beach there. That road really is a nice straight tangent road. There's no rationale under the current criteria for that to have ever been lowered to a 70. But I can say that because we have this criteria now, what we're striving for is to be a little more consistent in our approach to how we evaluate the speed limits due to usually complaints. And then, we can at least relay that information or what our rationale is back to yourselves and to the public. And this approach hopefully is going to fix that problem that you speak to, because yes, there is a lot of up and downs on the road. I agree 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Burley. Anything else?
Just to follow up, and thanks for that, Matt, and I do agree with what you're saying. The mayor of Georgian Bluffs, and this is a great road in our municipality, I don't like to use the cop-out, well, it's a county road, so call it county. That's not the right approach, I don't think. It's just if we can have a justification and a good reason why the county are doing what they're doing, it would make our job easier and probably even help with your job trying to justify what you're doing. And that's all I'm trying to say, is that it would be so much easier if if we had a good report, which we do now, to justify why the speed limits are, why they are, and so on and so forth. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Soavi, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I want to thank Matt for this report. It certainly raised a lot of questions in my mind. We dealt with a speed limit issue on Highway 26 last summer when things got crowded. So in looking at this, I don't see any mention of pedestrians or bicyclists. And certainly, you know, I think the road design and all of the geometric criteria are great. But the biggest issue that we see here in the town of the Blue Mountains is the safety issues around the interaction with bicyclists and pedestrians. Certainly crossing like Highway 26, I know it's not a county road, but I'm sure that there are many places like the Big Bay Road that Mayor Burley talked about, where there are people going to the beach and walking along that as well. I know when I've driven it, I've seen people, you know, using that for those kind of activities. So should we not be considering the interaction with pedestrians and bicycling in our non-geometric criteria? As far as county roads goes, if you ever go on to the Scenic Caves area, more and more people are walking along the shoulders of that road. It's not really designed for people to walk on that road. Similarly, Gray Road 19 through the village area, you get a lot of people there, bicyclists as well. So I'm very concerned that we're not looking at those aspects, because obviously, you know, high-speed traffic interacting with somebody carrying a large floatable toy to the beach is not a good situation.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Warden. Definitely point taken. You know, this criteria is not, you know, written in stone. There is room for latitude. Generally speaking, we do look at pedestrians and bicyclists. Now, bicycles are considered vehicles, and we try to accommodate them through our paved shoulder policy. So that is not one that, unless it's a confined area and there's some parameters that are causing some sort of conflict with bicycle vehicles compared to cars and trucks and whatnot, we don't see that as a huge concern. Not that it's not something that is considered. And as far as pedestrian goes, that's a tough one, because county roads aren't designed to accommodate pedestrians. So yes, there are pedestrians walking on county roads. People move to, say we'll use Gray Road 1, for instance, and they go for their daily walks on Gray Road 1, which really doesn't have any pedestrian facilities. And under the Municipal Act, I'm not trying to put it off by any means or way, shape, or form, but the county isn't really, our mandate is not to accommodate pedestrians, or that should be done through the municipality, through sidewalks, pathways, whatever. But pedestrians are always present, are always at the forefront. But you know, it could be anything from pedestrian, you know, their perception of people driving by. I don't want to say that, you know, people should look for pedestrian friendly facilities in order to go for walks, but really that is what I would personally do. I would go for a walk on the rail trail. I'd go for a walk at Harrison Park. I'd go for a walk at, you know, someplace that accommodate pedestrians. As it stands right now, a lot of our roads don't accommodate pedestrians, and the majority of them aren't going to be able to accommodate pedestrians in the future. So, but point taken for sure.
Anything else, Councillor Soever?
Just the one quick question. How do, I don't see how the average annual daily traffic counts factor into this. Certainly as traffic increases, there's more potential for interaction, particularly also with farm vehicles. And I know that's an issue here. We get people driving very quickly on some of the county roads and interacting with very slow moving farm vehicles. And we are an agricultural community. So do we, I don't see any factoring of daily traffic counts here, which I think would be important. And also, have we actually analyzed all the roads? And is there a map showing which are considered rural and which are considered urban? That distinction sometimes gets a little clouded in our areas, like around Craigleith, where, 10 years ago, a road would have been completely rural, but now with all the development happening, it is kind of suburban or urban even.
Right. Thank you, through you, Mr. Warden. I guess the first criteria you just brought up was with regards to the AADT, the annual daily traffic. So that number actually plays into all of the geometric criteria. So as far as the vertical curves, the horizontal curves, the cross section, the pavement width, the shoulder width, those are all based on volume. So there are minimum, say for instance, lane widths. If the volume is say between 300 and 1,000, a 3.25 meter lane with 1 meter shoulder is sufficient and acceptable criteria. And as the volumes go up, therefore the criteria increases the width of the pavement, the width of the shoulders and whatnot. And that also applies to horizontal curves. There's minimum radiuses, say for a 80 kilometer an hour design would be a 250 meter radius curve. Whereas you increase your design speed or decrease the speed, the curves can be either flatter or sharper depending on what they may be. So that's covered off automatically in those, the geometric portion of the criteria. As far as a map showing what is considered to be an urban road and what is considered to be a rural road, I do not believe we do have such an animal, but that would be very easy for us to put something together. I mean, our consideration of what a rural road is basically a road without curb and gutter and storm sewer system. So if you've got shoulders, you're on a rural road. If you've got curb and gutter and then any other facilities that the lower tier or the hamlet may encompass in that beyond the curb, that would be considered an urban setting from what the criteria specifically speaks to. And then you could have a semi-urban where you could have half of it with a shoulder and half of it with a curb and gutter and whatnot. But we can definitely put together a map. That would be pretty easy for us to do.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Mackey, you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Warden, and thanks, Matt, for all that information. Certainly an interesting discussion. Councilor Burley raises some good points as to why the county should be giving County Road 1 back to Georgian Bluffs. But in all seriousness, based on some of the criteria and the rationale for county roads, Matt, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago that we were first presented with the transportation master plan, and that was going to involve some horse trading between the county and municipalities. So I'm just wondering where that's at and when we can expect to have that back on the table, because it may help resolve some of these issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to defer that to Patrick, the director, as he's been working on some of the criteria involved with that possible transition.
Mr. Hoy.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, we're just about through the report for the connecting links or urban transfers, maybe what they'll be called. That should be coming in the next, I'm trying to get it done this week. Hopefully next meeting, that'll be on the docket. And then we'll go down the road exchanges. So again, that's mostly getting the conversation started from the recommendations from the draft transportation master plan, is that those issues were not straightened out in that master plan, to our detriment, I think. But anyway, the struggle is always with the money with those. I know, for people that were on that master plan committee, It seems obvious a road should be upper tier or lower tier, but then it just comes down to who pays for what. Every asset is underfunded. Who gets sort of saddled with more underfunded assets, right? So that's kind of where the struggle is for us. We don't want to kind of jeopardize the rest of our road system by giving away a whole bunch of funding for urban roads, which are fairly expensive. But obviously, if it's going to come under the jurisdiction of a member municipality, they'll need to pay for it somehow, as all their assets are underfunded now. So this year, we should get both those areas done. The connecting link report and the road transfer report should be finished, is our hope.
That's it, Councillor Mackey. Thank you. Councillor
Yes,
O'Leary,
thank you.
Councillor O'Leary, I believe that I saw, oh, he's disappeared. I thought that I saw him with his hand. Was there anyone else, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Councillor Millen.
Councillor Mill, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I just wanted to concur with Councillor Mackey and remind Councillor Burley that the next time that there is a road rationalization study, he will have the opportunity to support the downloading of Grey County Road 1 back to Georgian Bluffs, and then he can set the speed limits however he wants to set them. I'm good with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a firm shaking of the head from Councillor Burley. Councillor O'Leary, did you have your hand up?
No, I did not.
You did not. Okay, you were just adjusting something. All right, those are all the hands that I saw, Madam Clerk. Am I ready to call the question?
I don't see any more, sir.
Excellent. Then I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? I see none, so that too is carried. We've been sitting for just under an hour now, so I'm going to suggest that we take a break. They've been saying that sitting is the new smoking. So let's, it's now close to 10:30. Let's come back at 11:45. Okay, and we'll finish up. It's 10:45. You want to mute and stop your video. most of us are back. Orange juice in hand.
Yeah.
No vodka in it.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Okay, how are we doing? I think we definitely have quorum, if not everyone. We'll wait for the
Here I
clock.
am. Yes.
We'll give it the one more minute. Oops. Okay, Rob, are we good to go?
Yep, ready when you are, Mr. Warden.
I'm ready. So can I go?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so we are back. We are going to turn to item number 5B now, right? And Matt is on deck. This item's been moved by Councillor Mackey and seconded by Councillor Desai. And Matt, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Again, councilors. This report deals with bylaw 4788, good old 478813, that we typically take on a yearly basis to the fine group of people that are gathered here today. We're probably going to be moving forward taking this twice a year now, just because the volume of requests that we get that need to be dealt with would be better suited in a timely manner to go twice a year, but we'll see how that works out. So this version of a request for change to this bylaw is exclusively got to do with posted speed. That's Schedule N. It has been requested by a resident on Grey Road 1, the same residents for both these requests. The first request was to have the speed limit between Kemble Rock Road and Wyerden, which is all of Island View Drive, reduced to 70 kilometers an hour in the portions that are currently 80. So as per the attached figure to this report, there are sections that are already 50 kilometers an hour and 60 and 70 kilometers an hour through that section. But predominantly, the majority of that road is close to 80 kilometers an hour. So we have a request to move that to 70 kilometers an hour. And then additionally, in the hamlet of Big Bay, which is currently posted at 50 kilometers an hour in the hamlet proper, we have a request to extend that 50 kilometer an hour speed zone by a kilometer east of the existing designation where it changes to 80 going east. So those are the two that are being addressed with this report. In the discussion, the background of discussion, I've included as much information as I felt would cover off as far as rationale for why we're not endorsing, or Transportation Department aren't endorsing these changes. And I guess as a caveat, this was done through our speed policy as far as it was assessed through that criteria. But again, a lot of things with speed limits, and I think we kind of touched on that previously, are there's a little bit of latitude involved there. It's not 100% written in stone and cut and dry. But so for the 70 kilometer an hour section, or the entire road being put to 70 kilometers an hour, the factors that stood out that we looked at that kind of played into us not endorsing the change. I guess as some background, as I previously mentioned, we're trying to be consistent with speed limits. We're trying to, rural section is 80 kilometers an hour and urban section is 50 kilometers an hour. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, with geometrics or accidents or issues that may cause concern as based on the criteria as laid out in that policy. But in this, Grey Road 1 has got a lot of small curves in it. So with that, it moderately would suggest that you could reduce the speed limit, but at the same time, it's not a highly a factor that plays highly in why you would lower the speed limit. Some of the curves already have warning signs on them, what is typically done with curves that don't meet the criteria of an 80 km/h speed limit. A warning sign is placed to say 70 on the curb sign. So we cover those off with warning signs, generally speaking. The volumes of this road are only 300 cars per day. For sure, that goes up in the summer, but the average is 300 cars a day. And last year with COVID, we didn't get counts last summer, just with the COVID going on and whatnot. But I'm sure they were higher. The whole county, as was mentioned by Blue Mountains, with regard to the volume of people visiting and on our county roads and whatnot. So I'm sure the volumes were quite a bit higher. But the 2019 data is what we have that we've been going by. There are vehicles speeding on Grey Road 1 at all locations, typically like they are in all county roads. We've always noticed they're 10 to 15 kilometers over. Not everybody, of course, but what you call 85% of the people are driving at or just above the posted speed limit, is what our data suggests. We've also found that in lowering speed limits doesn't necessarily mean that's going to deter people from speeding. What we always do with speed limit requests is we definitely pass that information along to the local police services for enforcement. But as we all know, police services have a lot of things on their plate, and they don't necessarily prioritize speed enforcement on a low volume road that has no accident history as being a high consideration. And that would be the case at this location. The gentleman who requested speed limit reductions, I mean, he had some concerns with pedestrians, as was previously mentioned. I get it. I mean, there's people walking on the road, people are flying by them. Even if somebody's doing, the speed limit or less than the speed limit, it's still pretty imposing when, a 3,000-pound vehicle drives by you within, 6 or 10 feet of you. So, but I think perception is a bigger thing, that they look like they're going faster than what they are. But again, it's all valid concerns. So that's in the for the 70 km/h portion. The other, as I mentioned, was the extension of the Hamlet 50 km/h speed limit, which falls outside of the, if you can call it, geographic limits of the Hamlet. You start getting into a section of Grey Road 1 that is typical for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. We just feel that if we extend it by a kilometer to the east, the person 3 doors down is going to say, hey, why didn't you bring the 50 past my house? Or the person 500 meters up the road, why didn't you bring it past our house? And that way we'd be into a situation where we've lowered it because of a complaint. And it's typically the vocal minority that makes these complaints. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but that is typical, because we've had issues in the past where we've lowered the speed limit and then we get way more complaints about the speed limit being too low. So to that end, we're not recommending either one of these speed reductions. And I'll leave it up to you guys to ask any questions or anything you want to discuss. We can go from there.
Thank you very much, Matt. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And through you to Matt, I agree that on that road, and I'm concerned with the part from Campbellbrook Road right around through to Wyerton on that road, not the part leading up to it. There is one section that is 70, then it goes up to 80, down to 50, up to 80, down to 50, 60. It's a little confusing in that road. And I agree with the 250 kilometer sections. The rest, with all the curves and such, I'd like to see at 70 all the way around. And part of my reasoning in that is that area is being promoted as the scenic route from Wyerton around Owen Sound. And it's also part of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail now. So we're bringing a lot of people in there, summertime, adding them to the residents who do walk on that road. And it's really not made for people walking on the side of the road there. But those are residents who don't have a rail trail handy that they can go walk on. So they're using the road in front of their homes. So adding in the extra tourists in the summer and such, I think it would make more sense to have it at 70 all the way around, and maybe even replace those 60-kilometer areas where they're fairly straightforward areas. I don't see the rationale in having them necessarily at 60. So just my comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Matt, did I cut you off? Were you
No,
planning to
not at all.
respond to-
I was just, Mr. Warden, to Councillor from Georgian Bluffs, point taken for sure. And absolutely, I mean, there is, it's open to interpretation, and that's all fine and dandy. And that's why we're bringing it forward, so that we can get, input and, whatever the decision is, obviously as staff, that's fine.
Any other comments or concerns, questions? Okay, are we ready to vote on the item as presented? Councillor Carlton, this is your opportunity if you wish to, I guess, to suggest an amendment. You can bring an amending motion, but otherwise we'll vote on it as it's presented.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I would like to make an amendment to that to ask that it be taken to 70. So it's one consistent speed limit all around that section.
So just to be clear, the section that you're referring to is the section that's indicated as 80 kilometers per hour. How do I properly
You would be
identify that? Help
starting
me,
at
Matt.
where it shows it the 70, where Presqu'île Road meets Gray Road 1, and take
Yes.
it right around to Wyerton, with the exception of the 50-kilometer zones. Those should stay 50.
Okay. We have that, Madam Clerk. And I would need a seconder.
Point of order, Mr. Warden. Would it not be cleaner if this is the wish of Councillor Carlton, if the motion is defeated, and then provide whatever is she's trying to accomplish here? Well, I'm not speaking against or for, but I'm just wondering if that would be an easier way to deal with this.
No, I would say no, Councillor Milne.
Very well.
I would think it would be proper to deal with an amendment. If it is seconded, we would deal with that question. Then if it were defeated, we would go back to the original proposal as presented. Councillor Desai, I see your hand. Are you seconding?
No, Mr. Warden. I was going to actually raise the same point of order as Councillor Milne did, because as presented, the motion suggests that we not would not amend the bylaw. With what Councillor Carlton is suggesting is that we do amend the bylaw. So it is directly
I see what you're
contradicting.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. So that is taken, Madam Clerk. Input?
That both councillors are correct. It is in conflict to the original motion on the floor right now. So if the wish of council is to have amendments to 4788 Schedule N for that specific section noted by Councillor Carlton, then you would need to deal with the first motion on the floor, and if it's lost, yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Councillor Desai, for that clarification. So that said, I will suggest that we vote on the motion as it's presented by staff. And again, if it's defeated, then Councillor Carlton, I will entertain your motion at that time. Are we good? So everybody knows we're voting on the motion as it is presented by staff. So I'll call the question then. Anyone opposed? See one. I'm going to say that the motion carries. Okay, so we don't need to deal with the amendment. All right, we're moving on to item 5C. And Madam Clerk, you're on deck. It is moved by Councillor Milne and seconded by Councillor Carlton. Madam Clerk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden and Council. This report is coming forward for your consideration from a notice of motion requesting staff investigate a land acknowledgement. Staff have reached out to Mwikwidon Cultural Center and the communications staff at the Chippewas of Nawash from assistance in this field. We have they've provided several acknowledgements used by various organizations, insight on content, as well as directing staff to various websites for further assistance. A First Nations land acknowledgement must first and foremost be sincere and meaningful. It must serve a purpose and continue to provide a link, not only to the past First Nations people who inhabited this land, but also to those currently living in our area, and included as a sign of understanding, respect, and ongoing reconciliation. Grey County has been a proud home to various First Nation people, including the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, Six Nations, Wendat, Wyandotte, Métis, and Inuit. And currently, as you're well aware, there are 2 First Nations in the surrounding Grey County areas, the Chippewas of Nawash, Unceded First Nation, and Saugeen First Nation. Staff reached out to local municipalities within Grey County, as well as beyond our borders, to see what other municipalities had in place relative to a First Nations land acknowledgement. There's no one size fits all, I found that out, and various acknowledgements are around the province. Some municipalities use it at every meeting, while others use it for special occasions only. Staff work to develop a policy to assist in determining when a land acknowledgement could be used in order to ensure that the acknowledgement remains meaningful and continues to build upon the relationship between Grey County and our First Nations. The recommended policy is actually just another step in building that relationship. County departments continue to have several ongoing initiatives and consultations. Planning and Transportation consult on various applications with many stakeholders to garner input, concerns, and opportunities. As well, there's broader consultations related to the development of larger items like the official plan, forest management plan, recreational trail strategy, etc. Social Services, as you will have heard at the budget meeting, has an annual operating budget that has an Indigenous-led budget. And this supports access to culturally relevant early years programming for Indigenous families. As well, they maintain an ongoing relationship with Mwikwidon to ensure continued conversations related to social assistance and children's services. Council may also recall that they recently approved funding for MAM-WIM, Native Homes nonprofit project to renovate for transitional housing. We also provide funding to a number of Indigenous projects through our housing department. As well, Grey Roots has a traveling exhibit. The good people know our stories, know us. The histories and cultures of the Indigenous communities in Grey County can be seen throughout Grey Roots. So this is another step in moving this knowledge and this education forward. Staff are recommending endorsement of the land acknowledgement policy that provides for a variety of areas that the inclusion of a land acknowledgement might be appropriate. These would include special events such as the inaugural meetings of council meetings where there's a report related to land matters, corporate documentation such as the corporate strategic plan, forest management plan, official plan, annual budget, special events such as the opening of exhibits at Grey Roots, dedication ceremonies, etc. Where a question arises on appropriate use, discussions can certainly be held with the warden, CAO, and clerk. Staff are also recommending, as a more formal portion, is invitations being sent to the chiefs of both Chippewas of Nawash and Saugeen First Nation to hold an outdoor ceremony when we can meet in person at the County Administration Building for a more formal ceremony with an opportunity to learn and understand the history of the First Nations people in our area. It's my hope that this could be done maybe this summer, but that remains to be seen. The policy and the proposed land acknowledgement are here for your consideration.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I have so far Councillors Potter, Milne, and Body. So I'll go in that order and then look for others. So Councillor Potter, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to, we do use the statement as included in the report, but the next paragraph under the heading Land Acknowledgement Policy, in the last line, it said that it would provide a more meaningful process. Let me assure you, and I'm not sure that this is what was meant by that comment, but we consider it very meaningful. And that's why we have it at the beginning of every meeting, every committee meeting, every library board meeting, museum advisory council meeting, and so on, is because we do consider it very important. We have the Wyandotte village sites within our community as well as others. It was this, we had the assistance of two of our staff members who are of First Nations descent in writing this policy. So it has great meaning to us. I'm not sure how we would make it more meaningful by not using it as often. So I would hope that that wording would be amended to avoid saying that ours is not more meaningful. And other than that, I am totally for this. I'm not sure why it should take so long, but because I think it could be implemented fairly quickly if we all agree to it. But it's simply acknowledging truth. So I just would hope that the meaning of that paragraph was not intended to suggest that the statement we use at the beginning of every meeting of the Blue Mountains and all our committees is not meaningful.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry, and I apologize. That was certainly not my intent, Councillor Potter, in the least. And with regards to your second point, if council passes the policy, then once the minutes are adopted by council, the policy would be implemented right away, and we would ask that the formal ceremony take place later on in the year when we can have the chiefs present with council.
Very good. Next, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I want to first thank the clerk's department in general and Clerk Morrison in particular for her efforts to do this. And, to build on what Councillor Potter was saying, it's never too late to do the right thing. And I think this is the right thing, and it's the right time to do the right thing. The only thing I would ask is that for the formal ceremony, perhaps it would be, I think, a good thing to do to invite all of representatives from all of the traditional territories. I know the Haudenosaunee, or the Six Nations of the Grand, certainly have a small portion of traditional territory in Grey County, but nonetheless, it is a significant piece. The Grand River is very much part of the southeast corner of the county, rather. And I think it would be worth inviting them. Whether they choose to come or not is entirely up to them, of course, but I think it would be well worth inviting all of the representatives from all of the Indigenous communities in Grey County. So thank you, Heather.
And I'm gathering, Councillor Milne, you're saying extend it to not just the chiefs, but the councils as well?
No. Well, I would extend it to the chiefs of the traditional communities, and if they choose to bring additional representatives, by all means, we can break bread with as many want to come. More the merrier, as they say.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I see your hand again, but I'm going to go to Councillor Body first. Okay.
Thank you. Just to respond to my two previous speakers, Councillor Potter, I didn't read the report the way that you have, so I didn't read it the same way. We don't really have a policy, but I use the one from the First United Church pretty closely at the inaugurations, at any time that we are dealing with anyone from First Nations or Métis. If anyone wants to go into Google Books, you can get free books, and there's one called The Indian Chief that was written in like 1867 about what was going on here before they Nawash, Potawatomi, and Saugeen were moved out of their territory. It's really fascinating. There was a letter sent to the Queen saying that the Indian chief is not being treated properly, signed by 15 people, only 4 of which were Indian chiefs. The rest were basically white immigrants living in the city of Owen Sound. So our relationship used to be a lot better than it is now. And I think that's all something, reading this book, you can kind of learn some of the history and learn from it. I've heard of others that had started to very strongly do the land recognition at the start of meetings that have very quietly dropped it, sort of lost interest. And we don't do it every meeting because we want it, from our point of view, we wanted it not to be by rote. And different, communities do it differently. And I think I've got the backing of council doing it, I was going to say periodically, but at special moments, so it is more meaningful. And that's kind of the way we're doing it. And I can see why other municipalities do it differently. We also have a couple of different Métis groups here. One is, I think it's Saugeen Shores, or it might be Huron Shores, and the other one is here. It's fascinating. Métis, of course, were really offspring of Hudson's Bay explorers and fur trappers. They were on like maybe Mackinac Island or one of the islands at the north end of Lake Huron after the War of 1812, when that land got given back to the Americans. That island, a lot of them got moved to mostly east side, more where the tank range is, up north of Owen Sound. So they do have a long history here, but they don't have a treaty. So as we're inviting groups, we do have to include the Métis, but I like the proposal the way it is, and I think it makes sense. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boddy. Councillor Potter, I do recognize you, but I'm going to go, I'm sorry, to Councillor Desai first.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think an important part of the report that we have before us today is the fact that it quotes that these should not be made in isolation of other areas of consultation and education. I think that's a very important piece. My question through you, Mr. Warden, to staff is if they're able to expand on how we engage Indigenous people in consultation, as well as how we promote education of their history in our community.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Or do you want me to?
If you want to take it, Kim.
Okay. I think maybe I have the notes in front of me. Through you, Mr. Warden. And I know that Heather touched a little bit on this in her report. The county circulates all planning applications received by the county to Indigenous communities. We've also engaged Indigenous communities regarding county official plan updates. As part of Recolor Gray, specific sections were included to recognize the several Indigenous populations that have traditional territory within Gray County. We also included policies about the importance of engaging First Nations and Métis on planning applications and encouraging local municipalities to engage with Indigenous communities on local planning applications. Appendix C in the county's official plan shows traditional territories and treaty areas of various Indigenous communities within Gray County, and the county has also engaged Indigenous communities on other strategic initiatives like the Forest Management Plan, the Recreational Trails Master Plan, etc., and we intend to continue doing so. As far as the work that Grey Roots has undertaken and continues to undertake, the histories and cultures of Indigenous communities in Grey are interwoven throughout the permanent exhibits, interpretation, and even landscaping at Grey Roots. Heather mentioned the good people, and Jill Patterson, in talking with her, Grey Roots is eager to increase the representation of Indigenous history and culture at our site, and has started to reach out to representatives from Indigenous communities to create an advisory group that will guide our future projects. Building on these relationships will take time, but as Jill says, nothing about us without us, and she'd like our future work to be as Indigenous-led as possible.
Thank you. I like that. Nothing about us without us. Councillor Desai, anything to add there?
I just wanted to thank staff for that detailed answer, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent. Now we're back to you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add what Councillor Boddy said. We have the Anishinaabe who are around on Christian Island, and a couple of the other islands on that side of Georgian Bay, and they have been at some of the ceremonies around the Craigleith Depot and the Petunia, as they were called, sites around Craigleith, and also Chief English from the Oklahoma Wyandotte, who has represented her people at the depot and at some other ceremonies here. She's been here several times that I know of to take part in smudging ceremonies and so on. So it'd be great to invite her. I don't know if she would be able to come or send someone in her place, but there are a couple of others that have some past history and connection to our area.
Excellent. Thank you for that, sir. I don't see any other hands, and I think what I'm hearing is that when the timing is right, there will be something put together to formally celebrate this policy being put in place. All right, we've had good discussion. I think we're ready to call the question. Is there anyone opposed? And seeing none, that is carried. Thank you very much. We're moving on to item 5D, which is the Children's Gallery donation. I believe that we have Jill Patterson on deck with Claudette Martin. This is being moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Carlton. So Jill and Claudette, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. Thank you, Warden. Through you, I'll explain our sponsorship. So in November 2019, staff at Grey Roots Museum and Archives were approached by Fairmount Security Services to propose funding support for the development of a children's gallery at the museum. The proposal was met with great excitement given the strategic direction staff were pursuing to enhance the experiences for children to better support families as a target audience demographic. Fairmount Security Services generously offered the amount of $20,000 over the course of 5 years, $6,000 in the first year and $3,500 per subsequent years. The project and sponsorship were put on hold in 2020 with the onset of the pandemic. However, staff and sponsor are eager to move forward in 2021 as plans for recovery begin to take shape. In 2019, staff took a step back to review and reassess successes and opportunities, investigating ways to create more accessible experiences and services. Children, parents, grandparents, guardians, and caregivers were recognized as a priority audience. In addition to this, children's services offered through childcare, camps, and community programs were also identified as a market to leverage. I'll now invite my colleague Claudette Martin, Engagement Manager at Grey Roots, to describe what we're planning for the gallery.
Thanks, Jill. We're really excited about this. A children's gallery attracts families and groups looking for engaging and educational activities while making better use of Grey Roots' main building facility. Thanks to the generous support of Fairmount Security Services, staff will have the resources necessary to implement minor renovations and make unique equipment purchases to better serve Grey County families. The multi-year support approach will allow staff to add new experiences over time, allowing us to respond to the needs of our families as they use the space. Jill will share a couple of the images to give you a concept of what we're thinking with this. The Children's Gallery at Grey Roots Museum and Archives will house a playful, interactive learning space for children of varying ages to explore Grey County stories. Unique, child-focused, and relatable objects from the museum collections will be paired with lively wall murals, hands-on items, and expressive text in order to support the exploration of nature and history from a Grey County perspective. Children, their caregivers, their families will engage in learning through quiet reading spaces, building activities, art projects, games, and so on. The space will be animated by staff and special guests who will lead scheduled programs and activities. And back to Jill to wrap it up.
Okay, I'll just stop sharing my screen here. So for the duration of the agreement, the sponsorship of the Children's Gallery will be recognized through select marketing benefits, on-site signage, and with council's endorsement through the naming of the gallery as Zeus's Place. The name is a playful recognition of Fairmont Security Services trained security dog, Zeus. It's RS that council endorsed naming of the Children's Gallery at Grey Roots Zeus's Place for the sponsorship period of 2021 to 2025. Staff are keen to recognize this generous sponsorship and launch a dedicated year-round children's gallery at Grey Roots, and are confident that the equipment and experience will reach well beyond the 5-year sponsorship period. And I open it up to questions.
Thank you very much. This all sounds very exciting. When I read, is it Zeus's or Zoos?
Depends where you want to put the apostrophe. Zeus is the name of, I think most of you know Thomas Wheeldon of Fairmont Security. Zeus is the name of his security dog. And he's cute as all buttons when he's not working.
Okay, excellent. Council, any questions or comments? I do not see any. Well, thank you very much, ladies, for that presentation. Very exciting. And I also compliment both of you. I noticed that you're able to keep your eye on that camera while making your presentation, and I'm jealous of that. I don't know how you pull that off, but you have some kind of you'll have to write me about that and let me know your tip.
Deal.
All right. So I will now call the question on the motion. Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we are turning now to item 5E. Kevin McNabb, you're on deck. This is being moved by Councillor Potter and seconded by Councillor Mackey. And Kevin?
Warden, County Council, there's 2 parts to this report. The first one is regarding the purchase of 3 ambulances from Demers, and the second part is regarding transferring end-of-life cycle ambulances as well as stretchers and power loads with these ambulances to Grey Bruce Health Services. So this year's budget for 2021 includes the replacement of 3 ambulances. They have a 6-year lifespan, and typically they have over 275,000 kilometers when we and they end their cycle. This year is a 5th year of a 5-year contract with the Mayor's ambulances, where we've been purchasing these ambulances. What it's allowed us to do is to continuation with the standardization of our fleet. It allows local familiarity with paramedics for their equipment. It allows for service and parts and repairs, familiarity for the mechanics. The way it's been working is it's based upon the CPI increases December 31st of the previous year. This year, the CPI is 1%. The difference this year, though, is there's an additional $1,270 from Demers per vehicle, as the initial chassis they offered wasn't available. So this is a different type of chassis. The majority of the ambulance comes in a conversion, and they did hold to the CPI increase for that. But it is different than the previous agreements. Typically, our end-of-life cycle ambulance are disposed of through an auction, or they're just used throughout the county for other services. This year, Grey Bruce Health Services has interest in acquiring these vehicles, and what we're recommending is that we make an exemption from the public process and allow Grey Bruce Health Services to buy them for the average of the past 3 years price that we receive for them, which would be $10,700. Grey Bruce Health Services has also expressed interest in purchasing the power loads units, which go with these ambulances, as well 3 power stretchers. The power loads are used on 2 6-year cycles, and this would be the 2nd cycle for these ambulances. So we would be using those normally again one more time. And our stretchers, this year we have 1 being replaced that has been in service for 10 years. And next year we have 2 being replaced, which would be at the end of the 10 years. And what we're proposing is that we negotiate a price to ensure that our reserves aren't disadvantaged when we acquire new. Grey Bruce Health Services is also interested in the provision of vehicle, stretcher, oxygen, maintenance, because our mechanics are so specialized and understand this equipment, that we would continue with that as well. So those are really the bulk of the report and the request for that.
Thank you, sir. Council, any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, you have the report and I guess 5 items that are contained in the recommendation contained in this motion. I'm going to call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that too is carried. Thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, so I think the only thing we have left is adjournment. Oh no, we have a few things to deal with before that, right? Sorry, here we are. Other business. Is there any other business, council? CAO?
Thank you. Council, as I mentioned to a few of you prior to our meeting today, we all know that the province is lifting the lockdown as of next Tuesday. Despite that, it would be my recommendation that the county operations continue as we have been the last couple of months with remote service delivery. My recommendation would be that we continue in this format until mid-March and then revisit again at that time. So if this raises any concerns for any of you, please let me know. And I will discuss this with the member CAOs at our meeting tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Kim. Any questions or concerns to raise now? Otherwise, you can maybe do it by email or a phone call to Kim. Is there any other business? Okay, seeing none. Item 7. Oh, I see. Councillor Soever, did you have your hand up for other business? You're on mute, sir.
Question for our CEO as we're coming out of this lockdown, and of course the vaccine is here now. Does the county going to have a vaccine policy for its staff? I'm just wondering because that might help inform the lower tiers as well as to what they might put in place. I know that's been discussed quite extensively on media, is you know, employers instituting a vaccination policy for staff. So is the county working on one, or I just wondering about that?
Yeah, at this time, I think we're all just anxiously awaiting some sort of a timeline for when we can anticipate having the opportunity to be vaccinated. It's my understanding that it will be sometime in the fall before all of the vaccine will be available to allow the people that want it to be able to get it. Certainly, our staff in long-term care are a priority, and that's happening now as we speak. Beyond that, you know, I think that we haven't discussed whether or not there are other aspects of county operations where staff would be considered essential workers. Because if you're not an essential worker, then I think that you fall into the you'll fall into the age cohorts that are being built by the health unit or under the health unit's direction. So no specific plans for a policy right now. It's something that I think we should watch carefully, though, and I appreciate that you bringing that up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councillor Soever?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. Any other business? I see none. Is there any notices of motion?
Councillor Clumpus.
Councillor Clumpus.
Thanks very much, Mr. Warden. And yes, I do. Will be bringing forward a motion for the next meeting to discuss sometime in October, beginning of October. There was a motion received from the municipality of Meaford by County Council to consider the merits of delivering waste collection and disposal systems at the county level. Since then, we have had some expressions of interest in that regard. And recently, we just had notice of a second intake of the municipal modernization program from the province. And so my notice of motion will be to direct staff to apply for that modernization fund in the hopes of looking at a feasibility study for a countywide waste collection and disposal system.
Thank you very much. Any other notices of motion? Seeing none, we will move on to adjournment. Adjournment has been moved by Councillor Potter and seconded by Councillor Carlton. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
We're
you.
done at 11:30, 11:29, I think.
Well done.
Good job, Mr. Warden. Thank you all. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
All right,
everyone.
don't get used to it though.
Great
Remember,
weekend.
we're supposed to be available until 4